So it's good to see all of you. I'm thinking of other prayer needs as well this today. I'd love to have, after a brief sharing here, that would really take way too long if I were to do my uh, let's see. Tom says no mic or camera. Is that me? Can you all hear me? I'm good. Okay. So you can see me and hear me. Okay. All right, great. Thank you. I'm going to get off the chat because it distracts me and I'm too easily distracted. Okay. Praise the Lord. So there are so many things going on in the world right now. Israel is an incredibly stressful place, in a wine press. I see from my friends, several of them there, and I'm sure that Tamar would probably also agree that Israel is close to, believe it or not, a civil war. Um, it's extremely intense. There's a battle for their democracy. The impact of the Supreme Court has just been downgraded. There are forces at work that are looking to have a simple majority, same as what's going on here in the United States, so that smaller voices with a radical kind of agenda can have authority, power, and sway. It's really amazing to me that these things can be happening. But look, we have been positioned. You and I, we've been called to the kingdom. I'm going to get to John 15 in just a second, because it's something that has been really pressing me for the last couple of weeks. Yeshua said, "You didn't choose me, but I chose you." And he said something that is really been stirring me, bothering me, if I can even say that. He said, I don't call you servants any longer. And that Greek word servant is really the word slave. It has, like a lot of different Greek words and Hebrew, of course, there are different shades of meaning to that. That Greek word that he uses as servant, it can be voluntary, it can be bond servant, someone in the days of the writings 2,000 years ago of the New Covenant, a slave, a bond slave, not the same as purchasing someone, as we might think of slavery, but someone who would fall into deep debt and then would sell themselves into a place of servitude in order to pay off the debt. So there was an end to it, unless, of course, the debt was so overwhelming that you could never pay it off. And that's another term. But he said, I call you a friend. And that's really what I wanted to get to for just a few moments this morning. And I'll tell you why it stirs me and bothers me. As I started to dig into that word, first, of course, in the Hebrew, I love Hebrew, but the Hebrew word for friend is chaver, chaver. And it's the same root word as another Hebrew word, chivur. In Hebrew, the roots words rooted in three letters, when they share two of the three, they're closely related, and that's the case here with chaver and chivur. And it's more than just a casual relationship. It's a covenanted relationship. It's one with a deep sense of trust. And as I say that word trust, I'm reminded that the Bible tells us that we need to love everyone, including our enemies, which means we really need to understand that word love, lest we get ensnared into something that could destroy us. But the Bible never tells us to trust everyone. In fact, Proverbs 3 tells us only to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, soul, strength, and might, and lean not to our own understanding. But without getting too far afield, the Greek word used there for friend, when Yeshua says, "I call you friend," the word philia, and I don't know Greek. I'm not a Greek scholar. I do know Greek scholars, but I'm not one of them. That word that's used there in John 15, philia, is one of 6 major words that the Greeks use for the word love. So let me digress for just a second and point out why this moves and disturbs me a little bit, and I'll get back on course here. A couple years ago, I had a really bad day. It was one of those days that you don't circle on your calendar. It was one of those days of confrontation that went so deep that it took a while to get over the pain of it, the disturbance of the force, if you will, the sitting by yourself in a solitary place, wondering what it was that you just heard or you were confronted with. No details, except that I know that I actually heard the audible voice of the accuser of the brethren. I felt the impact of it, the weight of it, the sting of it, the burn of it, the heat of it, the hurt of it. And I found the cure for it in the voice. I'm going to try not to get too emotional in this. I found the cure for the voice of the accuser of the brethren. Remember, that's a spiritual thing. Although that voice may come through flesh and blood, it's a spiritual entity that comes to do 3 things: steal, kill, and destroy. So we don't wage war against flesh and blood. It's never the flesh and blood that's at fault. There's always a spiritual force behind it, and the mature can love while still discerning, guarding your own heart. The immature will be offended, hurt, taken out of the game, and that's why it can be so destructive. But back to the point, I found the cure for the destruction of the voice of the accuser of the brethren was in the voice of a friend. I found myself after that really bad day looking for, you get a burn, you look for the salve that's going to cool cool the skin, and eventually bring healing. That's what I was looking for in the midst of hearing something that I knew wasn't true, but still, what happened in the burn, whether it's a first, second, third, fourth degree burn, depends on how quickly you need to get to where, to your medicine cabinet or to the emergency room. Well, I was looking for an emergency room, and I found the cooling, healing salve to be a voice of a friend. I actually got on the phone and called two of my friends who happen to live in Israel. And without the details, I said to them, would you please just speak to me? How's the weather? How's your kids? What did you have for lunch? I just needed to hear the voice of a friend. I discovered that same healing in the voice of my wife. We've been married for 45 years at the end of April this year. And when I married her, I didn't know that she would be a friend of this kind. There were lots of reasons why I married her, but thankfully, she wound up being a friend who sticks closer than a brother. She wound up being a friend who loves at all times. Even when my words, I've found over the years, sometimes insensitive, or I may be looking for something to soothe my own soul, or I spoke to her in a way that was maybe inappropriate or self-serving or angry or impatient. I found her to be a friend who was born for a day of adversity. And what an amazing gift I have discovered over the years, my wife to be. But my friends that I called in Israel have proven over time to be this sort of friend as well. So just hearing their voices was a comfort. And again, not a not a counseling session as such, not a let's dig into my past and find out why that other voice had so much power to hurt. There have been other bad days in my life that were associated with sound, with the sound of voices. And so it wasn't a matter of inner healing. It was a matter of the voice of a friend. I'm sorry. I'll be right. Yeah, whatever's appropriate for what I told you, dear. Okay. I don't know. Probably 10 by 10, 10 by 12. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, y'all. That was the voice of my friend who's trying to stand in for me. Anyway, so back to John 15, so Yeshua says, I no longer call you a slave, a bondsman. I call you a friend. And then isn't it amazing? Isn't that amazing? So this Greek word friend, philia, is one of 6 words that the Greeks use for love. So I believe you can rightly say that a friend is a lover. Now, as you know, there's eros, there's the erotic kind of love, but there's also the agape kind of love, 6 different kinds. The Greeks really sought after this philia, friendship kind of love, because it wasn't based on emotion. It was based on a sense of deep loyalty. And now maybe you get a sense of why this has been bugging me a little bit. Because when I read these verses, particularly John 15, Yeshua says, I call you a friend. And as it happens with me, often I flip it around. And so now I begin to ask the question, what kind of a friend am I to Yeshua? Because after calling these disciples friend, a sense of deep loyalty, and a lover, one of them betrays him and sells him for pieces of silver. The others fall asleep in his greatest hour of need and can't even pray for him or pray with him for 1 hour. And then when he's taken away and nailed to a cross, they abandon him all except for one. And yet he says to them, I call you a friend. And so I have, again, trying not to be too emotional about this, I've been asking Yeshua to search me and then to help me be a friend to him, a lover of Yeshua. As you remember, Peter said, hey, everybody's going to leave you except for me. You've got a friend in me. You can trust me. I'm a philia, but I'm also an agape. I will never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I am here. And at the first opportunity, he's, nope, don't even know him. Nope, we're not even from the same town. Nope, I don't even know what he likes to do in his spare time. Nope, don't know the man. And it has gnawed on me. And so I submit that to you today. My father didn't become a disciple of Yeshua until well into his adult life. Without all the details, he was really disturbed by my faith. My dad, Jewish, who I call the reluctant Jew. He didn't like being Jewish. He didn't embrace being Jewish in any way. Living through the Great Depression, I don't know why they called it great. It wasn't so great. The Holocaust, flying 35 missions in a B-17 over Nazi Germany, with a sidearm strapped to him with one bullet in it. He told my mother, if our plane goes down, that bullet is not for defense. It's for me, because we know what happens to Jews during those years of the Third Reich. And so my faith, and then becoming a cantor in a Messianic congregation and making recordings and announcing to the world, as it were, that I'm a Jew who follows Yeshua, was very difficult for him until he surrendered his life, and then everything changed. But he left me, I remember one word of advice that my father gave me my entire life. He said, choose your friends wisely because you become who they are. I never forgot those words, and they remain true to this day. So I want to encourage you with these words, to be the kind of a friend first to Yeshua. Without being a friend to him, we can't be a friend to anyone. What does it mean to be a friend to Yeshua? He actually describes that in John 15. He says, if you do my commandments, if you do what I say, then you prove to me that you are my friend. There's a I love the first movie of Shrek. I've found out as I delve more into this friend word, why. Initially, the donkey, Shrek is given a task. If he wants to get his swamp back, he has a task he has to do. Well, he can choose someone to go with him. You're probably familiar with the movie. And of all the cartoon characters, nobody wants to go on this quest to slay the dragon and get the queen and all the rest, except the donkey. And there's this huge crowd, and Shrek says, "Okay, who will go with me?" And there's this huge silence, except from the back of the pack, and the donkey is jumping up and down. He says, "Choose me, choose me." And Shrek is doing everything he can do to ignore this passionate animal who wants to be his friend. Maybe because Shrek has a different idea of who a friend should be, what a friend should be, and how a friend should act. But through the whole movie, the donkey proves himself to be someone who, no matter what's going on, he is there. He's encouraging. He's standing with in difficult times. There's fire. There's brimstone. There is a bridge that's burning that they have to cross. There is a dragon to defeat and overcome. And where's the donkey? He is right there through thick and thin. And when things begin to really go south for Shrek, and he's disappointed, things haven't worked out the way he wanted. His heart is broken over a thwarted love affair. He's still there, and he's still encouraging and loving. And Shrek says to him, in his Irish accent, which I won't try, "What, donkey, what is the matter with you? What are you doing? Stop it. Why are you doing this?" And donkey says this. He says, "Because that's what friends do." I want to be known as a friend of Yeshua because my life poured out. Why do you get on planes? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Because that's what a friend does. He does what his friend asks him to do, even when it's something that's not asked for. A friend is there, a friend's voice, the words of a friend, the encouragement of a friend. Yeah, and sometimes there's sparks because iron sharpens iron. A friend isn't always throwing rose petals. A friend can love you with words that are might sting, but they're meant to heal. But I think the heart of a friend is always seen in the intent. Anyway, I want to encourage you, as I've been encouraging myself. And there's a whole lot more, but I think this needs to be a small booklet. To be a friend first to Yeshua. Then we can be a friend to our spouse, those that the Lord brings across our path. But choosing our friends wisely. There's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. There's a friend who is born for adversity. Iron sharpens iron. All of it is true. But more than a worship leader, more than a pastor, even more than a disciple, I want to be known to be a friend of Yeshua. That's become the new goal of my life. And I better leave it there. Father, we are moved by the love that you have demonstrated to us in your Son, that you so loved us when we were still your enemies. You loved the world and you gave. Your love seems to have no bounds. Your love is complete and whole and wholesome. And the love that we strive to embrace seems so far short of yours. Lord, I'm asking for myself and perhaps for all of us on the call today, Lord, for the kind of love to be shed abroad in our hearts again today that would speak into the hurting places, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of so many. Lord, would you pour out your love in us afresh today? I'm reminded of the Apostle Paul, who said that he died every day, probably to his own needs, his own hurts, his own wants, his own pain. He died to it every day to embrace the kind of love that drove him to the far reaches of the earth and to be abused like you were, and yet to love people. Lord, help us to love you today with your kind of love. Turn your love around in us back towards you. May we be a friend to you today. We know it's such a strange thing because you don't have needs. You don't have any needs, and yet you call us a friend, someone who is loyal, deeply loyal, even to the laying down of their own life. And Lord, help us to embrace this, first for you and for our spouses and for those that you bring into our lives. and for all of my friends on this call, Lord, areas where they need to hear the voice of a friend. I pray, Lord, you'd turn up the volume of your friendship in their life, in their heart and mind today. Let the voice of their friend, Yeshua, Jesus, their friend who sticks closer than a brother, one who's born for a day of adversity, one who lays down his life, would drown out the voice of the accuser of the brethren. And Lord, cause them to stand in a place of strength and healing and restoration and fullness, so that your love is seen and known in and through them. Father, would you do that for each and every one in the name of Yeshua?